Chapter 46:20. Mo leaned against the back of the sofa and said softly, "Are you saying that she will lose her memory?" "It's just a possibility. Don't wait in line. The brain is the most complicated part of the human body. Everything will have to wait until she wakes up." After saying that, Chen walked over and patted his older brother on the shoulder. His older brother was so miserable. This was how loving they were. Mo did not say anything. He just looked up at his younger sister, or more like his younger brother. After a long time, Mo suddenly put his head on Chen's shoulder. Chen was shocked. When did his brother become so fragile? But soon, Chen understood that Mo showed this side of him because he loved Hehuan very much. And if it wasn't for her, he would probably be pretending to be calm. Chen did not move. He quietly accompanied him for a while and then asked softly, "Second brother, do you want a cup of coffee?" Only when he was very serious would he call him second brother. Mo was silent for a while and then asked softly, "What's the worst?" Chen's voice was slightly low. "Forget you, forget Hehuan, forget everyone, but it won't affect my life." Mo was silent for a moment again. He actually laughed softly and said, "Won't it affect my life if I forget everyone?" It was fine if she forgot, but what about his heart? Would he have nowhere to put it? Chen knew that he was sad, but this kind of thing could not be helped. After all, it was related to the brain. It was not something that could be operated on. She could only continue to say, "If the blood clot continues to grow, we can only have surgery. If it stays the same, then..." "Brother, it's up to you." Mo gently moved his head away and leaned against the sofa. He wiped his face and then whispered, "Make a cup of coffee for me." Chen nodded and then went to make the coffee. While she was cooking, Mo said in a low voice, "I want her to be well. As long as she's well, nothing else matters." Even if his heart was broken into pieces and had nowhere to put it, he could endure it. The only thing he could not bear was her leaving him, not being by his side, not being well. As long as she was well, even if she only had the intelligence of a 7 or 8-year-old, he would still be able to raise her. Chen didn't speak until he poured the coffee into a cup and brought it over to him. Then he said in a low voice, "It's not as bad as you think." Mo took the coffee and took a sip. Then, he looked down at the coffee in the cup and smiled bitterly. Chen didn't say anything and just accompanied him. In the time it took to drink a cup of coffee, Mo had calmed down a lot. He put down the cup and said, "I'll go check on Hehuan." "I'll go too." Chen also put down his cup. The two of them got up and went to the VIP ward together. Hehuan was still unconscious and lying there quietly. Her body was already weak to begin with, and this time, her face was even paler than before. Mo's heart ached when he saw her like this. He sat by the bed and held her hand. Her hand was cold too. He still remembered holding her hand like this in the car this morning. At that time, her little hand was warm because of the hot fruit tea. Mo's brows were filled with pain as he said in a low voice, "When are you going to wake up?" He wanted her to wake up, but he was afraid that she would wake up. He was afraid that when she woke up and opened her eyes, he would see a pair of strange eyes asking him, "Who are you?" If that happened, he would probably feel a lot of heartache. However, he was also afraid that if she didn't wake up, she would never wake up again. So, if it was painful, it was fine as long as she woke up. Chen watched silently from the side and sighed in his heart. Chapter 46:21. She didn't know how to comfort her brother. She thought about it and patted his shoulder. "Should we inform our family?" Mo's back stiffened. After a long while, he said in a low voice, "Let's not tell them first. Just tell them that Huan is busy with work. If her mother finds out, she will be sad again. Actually, Qin Mo had a kind of hope in his heart. He hoped that Huan would be fine. Even if she forgot for a while, she would remember later. There was a tinge of pain in Qin Mo's eyes. This pain was unbearable, but he had no choice but to endure it. Qin Chen's heart ached. Brother, I will definitely think of a way. Qin Mo's voice came over. Actually, as long as she is fine, it doesn't matter. Qin Chen didn't know what to say. When did his brother become so righteous? He didn't want mutual love and only wanted a one-sided sacrifice. When did he become so noble? Qin Chen really couldn't believe it. Qin Mo didn't know how much time had passed. It was probably getting dark, but Huan still hadn't woken up. Qin Mo started to get anxious, and Qin Chen went in and out of Huan's ward countless times. He couldn't care about other patients. But when it was 8:00 at night, Huan was still lying quietly without waking up. Even Qin Mo couldn't stay calm. He quietly looked at Huan's sleeping face. He didn't know how long she was going to sleep for. He also didn't know why Huan didn't wake up. Qin Chen said that she should wake up. If she didn't wake up, it was likely that she didn't want to wake up. This possibility made Qin Mo very uncomfortable. Did she not want to wake up and see him? Or did she not want to live with him? He was most afraid that she had a shadow of the past in her subconscious. This was fatal to Qin Mo. He couldn't accept the fact at all. Hour after hour, Huan did not wake up. Eventually, Qin Chen felt uneasy and personally checked Huan from inside to outside. Other than the small blood clot, there were no other problems. When Qin Chen looked up, he happened to see Qin Mo. There was no expression on his face. However, the more expressionless he was, the more flustered Qin Chen felt. Everyone knew how much Qin Mo cared about Huan. If Huan didn't wake up, Qin Chen had no doubt that Qin Chen would blow up the entire Xingyuan hospital. Her diamond rice bowl would be smashed to pieces. Just thinking about it was enough for Qin Chen. Apart from that, she also felt sorry for Huan. After all, Huan was a very lovable little girl who had suffered a lot from Qin Mo. It wasn't easy for them to reconcile. Only then did they feel happy. At midnight, Qin Chen gave up for the time being and looked at Qin Mo. Qin Mo stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and looked outside. He said in a very low voice, "Will she refuse to wake up?" Qin Chen pursed his lips. "No, you love each other so much." Qin Mo reached out to touch his forehead and said in a low voice, "I'm afraid that we haven't loved each other for too long. Now that she's asleep, her mind is filled with the image of us not loving each other. She won't forgive me and won't wake up." Qin Mo had never been so worried and fragile. It was as if the sky was falling down. Qin Chen almost didn't know how to comfort him. After a long time, he could only say in a low voice, "No, Huan loves you. She won't refuse to wake up." Qin Mo turned his head and looked at his sister. Qin Chen knew that he was panicking now, so he could only comfort him. "I promise she will wake up. It's just a matter of time. Maybe Huan is just tired." Chapter 46-22. Qin Mo just looked at her. After a long time, he murmured, "Really?" Qin Chen found it funny, but at the same time, she felt sad. When had her second brother, Qin Mo, ever been so stupid? At this moment, he must be out of his wits. That's why he behaved like this. Qin Mo almost didn't eat anything all day. Qin Chen ordered 2 meals and brought them in. In the middle of the night, Qin Mo was still guarding her without sleeping. Qin Chen's heart ached, and he said in a low voice, "Eat something." I'll keep you company. Maybe He Huan will wake up tomorrow morning. Qin Mo said no. In the afternoon, he called back to the villa and asked Shinting to take good care of Yi Huan. With Shinting around, he didn't have to worry. He was only worried about Yi Huan, the little fool. And she forgot to wake up. There was a touch of pain in Qin Mo's eyes. After a long time, he slowly walked over and sat in front of the small dining table. He and Qin Chen reluctantly ate a few mouthfuls of food and put down the tableware in their hands. She didn't wake up. How could he eat? Seeing her like this, Qin Chen pursed his lips and said in a low voice, "Always eat a little. Qin Mo, there are a lot of things for you to deal with later. You are not made of iron." Qin Mo stared at the food for a while, then looked at Qin Chen and said lightly, "Watch Yi Huan for a while. I'm going to smoke." He looked very calm, but Qin Chen felt a little scared. When Qin Mo was about to leave, Qin Chen couldn't help saying, "Second brother." Qin Mo turned his head and looked at her. "What's wrong?" Qin Chen suddenly felt that his mouth was dry, and his voice was a little hoarse. Yi Huan will be fine. She actually wanted him to not take things too hard, because she could see that Qin Mo's nerves were already very tense, to the point where he would break at a single touch. Qin Mo frowned, looked at her quietly, and then said in a low voice, "I'm fine." As he spoke, he walked out. He walked all the way to the end of the corridor and stood there quietly. After a long time, he lit a cigarette and smoked lightly. It was not loneliness, but heartache. Qin Mo smoked alone for a long time before returning to the ward. In his heart, he more or less hoped that Yi Huan would wake up in his absence, but she didn't. She lay there quietly, and Qin Chen was examining her. Qin Mo knew that Qin Chen had tried her best, so he patted her gently on the back and said, "Well, you have tried your best." Qin Chen straightened up. "Go to sleep. Maybe she will wake up tomorrow." Qin Mo comforted Qin Chen instead. Qin Chen bit her lip, and after a long time, she said in a low voice, "Okay." She then said, "Qin Mo, you should sleep for a while too." He grunted, but in the end, he didn't say anything and just lay on the sofa. Qin Chen stayed with him. Qin Mo put his hands behind his head and kept looking at the ceiling. His voice was also very soft. "Qin Chen, do you remember when we were young and Yi Huan came to our house for the first time?" Probably thinking about it, Qin Chen smiled slightly. "Yes, she was very beautiful, even more beautiful than Qin Mu. I remember that night, Qin Mu cried and said that you hugged Yi Huan instead of her. Just because Yi Huan was a little more beautiful." Qin Mo smiled slightly, but his smile was a little bitter. After a long time, he said in a low voice, "Yes, she was very beautiful." Chapter 46-23. Qin Mo smiled slightly, but his smile was a little bitter. After a long time, he said in a low voice, "Yes, she's very pretty." But he didn't like her just because she was pretty. Qin Chen didn't say anything. The brother and sister each had a sofa. They said they wanted to sleep, but how could they? They lay on the floor and stared at the ceiling. For Qin Mo, the night had never been so long. Also, it was hard. He wasn't a pessimist, but tonight, he thought of the worst possible outcome. In the end, he still couldn't let it go. He didn't know how to convince himself. Maybe it was because he loved her too much. He loved her so much that he thought that if he could, he would rather it never happened. He didn't love Yi Huan. He didn't hurt her and she didn't love him. If he didn't love her, she wouldn't have to suffer like this. She would still be fine. Maybe one day, she would meet Rongyu and have a perfect love, just like what Ai Mengmeng had now. That was what Yi Huan had once had the chance to have. And Chi Nemo always thought that He Huan would be happier with him, but he never thought that one day, he would feel that He Huan would be hurt by him. He was always confident, he had so much. It was glory for He Huan to be with him. There was nothing he couldn't solve for her. But she was still dragged down by him. Yes, that definitely wasn't an ordinary fan. Someone who could do such a thing couldn't be ordinary. Chi Nemo had already sent someone to investigate. According to the news that night, that person wasn't an experienced fan at all. He was a gangster who had recently received a sum of 200,000 yuan. Chi Nemo felt that he knew who did this. It could not be anyone other than Ai Jia. The man was already under control. Chi Nemo didn't have the time to care about him because he had to watch over He Huan. As for the others, he would deal with them slowly in the future. For example, Ai Jia. Just like that, Chi Nemo waited. He waited for a long time, but she still didn't wake up. He Huan had been unconscious for 3 whole days. To Chi Nemo, these 3 days felt like 3 years, or even 3 centuries. It was as long as heaven and earth. In 3 days, he had lost about 7 to 8 kilograms. He had lost a lot of weight. Qin Chen was very worried about him, because Chi Nemo refused to sleep from the 2nd day onwards. He didn't sleep for a whole 48 hours and kept looking at He Huan. He didn't know how much time had passed, but just as he lost hope, He Huan's hands moved and she slowly opened her eyes. She opened her eyes under his gaze. Qin Mo's eyes were bloodshot and red from the prolonged treatment. His eyes met with He Huan's. One was old and the other was pure and innocent. Qin Nemo remained silent. He was waiting for He Huan to speak first. Finally, He Huan spoke in a very soft voice, Qin Nemo. As soon as those 2 words came out, Qin Nemo felt as if all the lights in the world had lit up. His heart was filled with an indescribable feeling, as if it was about to float out. The passion made him want to hug He Huan and spin her around. He also wanted to kiss her hard. It seemed like he hadn't kissed her properly in a century, but after thinking so much, he only felt tired in the end. It was as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. After all, he hadn't slept well for a few days. He actually fell asleep next to He Huan's bed. It was unexpected. Chapter 46-24. He Huan was also a little stunned. She looked at Qin Nemo blankly, watching him sleep. He was still the same as he was in her memory, looking extremely domineering. Had he returned to China? Why was she in the hospital? Also, he seemed to have aged a lot after his trip abroad. Was it so hard to study abroad? He Huan looked around. She felt that her bones and muscles were in pain. Even the slightest movement was painful. She closed her eyes slightly. When she opened them, she looked around again, wondering why she was in the hospital. Moreover, she was with Qin Nemo. At this moment, Qin Chen pushed the door open and came in. He was a little surprised as soon as he came in. He Huan was actually awake. At this moment, her eyes were as pure as a rabbit's. Qin Nemo, on the other hand, seemed to be asleep. Qin Chen smiled at the door. You're awake. Qin Nemo will be very happy to know that you're awake. He Huan stared at Qin Chen. For some reason, she felt that everything was different. Qin Nemo looked a lot more mature than she remembered, and Qin Chen was also different. What happened? Why did he seem different? He Huan shook her head in confusion. Her voice was also a little soft. Qin Chen, why am I here? Qin Chen sighed in his heart. Fortunately, she can still remember people. However, he felt that He Huan's eyes were not quite right, so he stretched out a finger. How many is this? He Huan was stunned. 1. Ah! Qin Chen stretched out another finger. What about this? He Huan's eyes widened. She snorted. Qin Chen, you're so stupid. The world's top surgeon's face was a little dark, but it was still worth celebrating. After all, there was nothing wrong with her little sister-in-law's brain. However, she still felt that something was wrong. He Huan was different. The look in her eyes did not look like that of a 33-year-old woman. Logically speaking, she should have been very touched to see Qin Emo guarding her when she woke up, but she didn't feel that way at all. It was as if Qin Emo was a stranger to her. Qin Chen did not specialize in the brain, but she had heard of such a thing. A person's memory was segmented. He Huan could remember them, but it did not mean that she could remember everything. Her memory might have stopped at a certain stage. However, no one knew where Qin Chen had stopped. Therefore, she asked carefully, "What's the date, He Huan?" He Huan looked at Qin Chen. "What year is it?" Why did Qin Chen and Qin Emo look so much older? He Huan suddenly felt a little panicked. Qin Chen frowned, probably knowing that his guess was right. Even He Huan could feel it. She stared into He Huan's eyes and looked at her attentively. She asked softly, "Do you know what year it is?" He Huan's face was already pale, but now it looked even paler. Her beautiful lips were pursed tightly. Then, she said softly, 2004. Qin Chen cursed in her heart. What the fuck? Indeed, it was what she thought. He Huan's memory stopped at a very bad time. At that time, she and Qin Emo were not married yet. At that time, she liked Rongyu. Qin Chen screamed in her heart, "Rongyu has a wife." And now it's 2019, He Huan. However, He Huan was so delicate now. How could she dare to provoke her? No matter how angry she was, she could only say calmly, "He Huan, it's 2019 now. You and Qin Emo have been married for 8 years. Chapter 46-25. After Qin Chen said that, He Huan was stunned. Her gaze fell on Qin Chen's face. After a long time, it moved to Qin Emo. She and Qin Emo were married. He Huan's lips trembled slightly. In her heart, she was 18 years old. The person she liked was Rongyu, not Qin Emo. Yes, she liked Qin Emo, but that was a long time ago. Later on, she was afraid of him. Why was it 2019 when she woke up? Why did she marry Qin Emo? He Huan almost couldn't believe it. She bit her lower lip and stayed in a daze for a while. Suddenly, she lifted the quilt and wanted to jump out of bed, regardless of her sore muscles. Qin Chen called her, but He Huan didn't want to listen at all. She just wanted to leave. She had just moved a little when her elbow was held by a strong hand. He Huan turned around and saw that it was Qin Emo in 2019. It was said that she had been married to Qin Emo for several years. She used to be so afraid of his Qin Emo. She didn't like Qin Emo anymore. The one she liked now was Rongyu. But where was Rongyu? She wanted to go find him. Qin Mo's expression didn't look good. He kept staring at her and his voice was frighteningly hoarse. Where are you going? Without waiting for He Huan's answer, he looked up at Qin Chen. Go out first. Qin Chen was a little speechless. He Huan had lost part of her memory. Sigh, shouldn't she go for a checkup when she finally woke up? Why was she talking about these small feelings? Besides, if He Huan wanted to find Rongyu, she should go. Rongyu was married and had Ai Meng Meng by his side. Wouldn't He Huan just give up if she went? Qin Emo was just too domineering. He couldn't understand this point either. However, under Qin Mo's gaze, even Qin Chin did not dare to stay any longer and immediately left. After the door was closed, Qin Mo looked at He Huan. His eyes were very faint, but other than that, there was also a trace of pain. It was a pain that He Huan could not understand. She couldn't understand it. He Huan's lips moved slightly, and her voice was also soft. Qin Mo stared into her eyes and asked slowly, "Are you looking for Rongyu?" He Huan's lips moved, but she didn't say anything. Qin Mo was still talking to her in a very calm voice. "We have been married for 7 or 8 years. We have a child named Qin Yi Huan, which means that Qin Mo's sweetheart is He Huan. I have never told you this before. We also have a child named Shinting, who is 13 years old. You like him very much. Before you lost your memory, our family was very happy. By the way, your movie has been very popular these days. It has already exceeded 1 billion in 5 days. The scriptwriter is Rongyu, and the third female lead is Rongyu's wife. Her name is Ai Mengmeng." He finished quietly, but He Huan's face was already a little pale. She couldn't accept such news. Suddenly, she broke free from his hand, stumbled to the bathroom, and ran in front of the mirror. She looked at her face slowly in the mirror. That face was definitely not the face that the 18-year-old He Huan had, especially her eyes, which contained too many things. He Huan's lips trembled slightly, and she couldn't say a word. Qin Mo also appeared in the mirror, looking at her indifferently. He Huan and his eyes met in the mirror, but neither of them spoke. For He Huan, such news was explosive. When she woke up, the man she was so afraid of had become her husband, and he had been married for many years and had a child. Rongyu, whom she liked, also had a wife. Chapter 46-26. He Huan's eyes met Qin Mo's. After a long while, she lowered her eyes and said in a low voice, "Qin Mo, I want to calm down." As soon as she finished speaking, he carried her by the waist. He Huan exclaimed. Amidst his exclamation, he gently placed her on the bed. His fingers touched her forehead gently. "I'll call Qin Chin over to check on you." He Huan subconsciously wanted to avoid his fingers, but Qin Mo still turned her little face over. He didn't do anything else. He just reached out to pinch her chin and carefully looked at her little face, not letting go of any expression on her face. He Huan's lips trembled slightly. She suddenly felt a little angry and turned her face away. Qin Mo was also a little angry. The more worried he was before, the more angry he was now. He stared at her. "You're still thinking about him, aren't you?" He Huan's stubborn temper flared up. She pursed her lips and didn't speak. Qin Mo's eyes were filled with coldness. He stared at her and said slowly, "You'll see him in the future. But before that, you have to stay here and be my wife." When was He Huan's memory of waking up? It was when she was rebellious. It was when she disliked Qin Mo the most. Almost everything he said and did was wrong. Of course, He Huan couldn't stand his tone. She pursed her lips and stared at him. Qin Mo's eyes also looked at her quietly, without the slightest emotion. Very well. She looked at him with that kind of gaze and that kind of mood, so he didn't have to be polite to her. Qin Mo gritted his teeth as he thought about it, but his heart was extremely sad. After staring at her for a while, he finally walked to the window and didn't want to talk to her. He Huan pursed her lips and moved a little. But Qin Mo seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. His voice was deep and hoarse. "You'd better not think about running away. Think about your parents and Rongyu." He Huan sat on the bed and narrowed her eyes. "Are you threatening me?" "Yes." Qin Mo's voice came over, "I'm threatening you. It's not the first time I've done this, so you'd better be good and not make me angry. He Huan was a little confused, but that was what Qin Mo had always done in the past. She stared at him coldly for a while before lying down. She pulled up the blanket and ignored him. Qin Mo turned around and stared at her. Then, there was a hint of suppression and restraint in his eyes. The 18-year-old He Huan was just like that. He could even guess that she must hate him to death right now. Also, she must want to rush to Rong Yu's side, as if she hated him to the core and couldn't wait. Just thinking about it made Qin Mo want to strangle her. However, he could only think about it. He couldn't bear to do it. In the end, he was the one who was angry. After a long time, Qin Mo said, "I'll ask Qin Chen to come over." In fact, Qin Chen came over on his own. He opened the door and poked his head in. The handsome Dr. Qin was rarely mischievous. "Have you thought about it?" Qin Mo stared at her. "Get in here." Qin Chen smiled. The word "get out" is better used. Besides, I'm the best doctor here. It's not appropriate for me to say "get out" to you, right? Qin Mo was still frowning. "Why do you have so much nonsense? Get in here." Chapter 46-27. Qin Mo was still frowning. "Why are you talking so much nonsense? Get in here." Qin Chen came in with a smile. That was true. What was the use of getting so angry? They could just nurture each other. He already had a love rival, so what was there to be afraid of? Besides, He Huan would definitely like Yi Huan and Shinting. What was there to be afraid of with the two kids in her hands? Qin Chen came over, but He Huan's head was still covered. She walked to the bedside and pulled back a corner of the quilt. She said teasingly, "I checked, little Huan Huan." Little Huan Huan was exclusive to He Huan when she was in her teens. Now that He Huan was in her teens, Qin Chen called her that. Qin Mo's face darkened, and he wanted to strangle his sister. At this moment, Qin Chen pulled back the quilt and was stunned. He Huan was crying. Her small body was curled up on the white hospital bed, looking very pitiful. Her hair covered half of her face, and there was a trace of light on the other half that was not covered. That is, she is crying. Although Qin Chen was a woman, she was very protective of the fairer sex. Seeing this scene, she immediately looked at Qin Mo and asked silently, "What did you do to her?" Everyone knew how good Qin Mo was to He Huan, but sometimes, he could be as bad as He Huan. That was why Qin Chen asked this. At this moment, Qin Mo pursed his lips and stared at He Huan in horror. His voice was low and cold. "Who are you crying for?" Qin Chen almost fainted. "Why are you still asking this at this time? Second brother, why don't you go out first or sleep in my room? I'll stay here with you. It's easier for us women to communicate," He Huan said. Qin Mo's voice was even colder. "What kind of woman are you? Only Lan Yu treats you as a woman." Qin Chen was about to go berserk. What did Qin Mo say? This bridge was torn down, and Qin Mo hadn't even crossed it yet. However, seeing that he might not have a wife for a long time in the future, she tolerated it. Anyway, he was a pitiful person, and he must be hateful. Qin Chen felt much better after thinking about it. He was about to reach the peak of his life. Although Qin Mo said this, he knew that he couldn't fight with He Huan now. But she was crying now. Before he left, he wiped her tears with a tissue and threatened, "If you cry again, I'll let Qin Chen give you an injection." Qin Chen was a little confused. Qin Mo was sure that she was unhappy now. She was actually enjoying looking at him. But she could only think about it. She didn't dare to say it out. After Chin Mo said that, He Huan buried her face in the pillow. She didn't want to talk to that hateful man. How could she like Chin Mo before? And all of this was seen by Chin Chin. He was angry and amused at the same time. He Huan, who was 18 years old, was against Chin Mo, who was 40 years old. In the future, the Chin family would probably be in chaos again. For her, well, there should be a good show to watch. After Chin Mo left, Chin Chin stopped joking. He sat on the bed with a sigh and touched He Huan's shoulder. Chin Mo is gone. Don't cry. After talking for a long time, He Huan didn't move. Chin Chin turned her around. Well, you've made enough trouble. Let me check. He Huan lay on the bed and stared at Chin Chin. After a long time, she asked softly, You became a doctor. Chapter 46-28. Seeing that she had spoken, Chin Chin smiled, Yeah, and he's a very good doctor. He Huan sat up and stared at Chin Chin. Chin Chin let her stare. After a while, He Huan tugged at Chin Chin's hair and said in a low voice, Everything has changed since I woke up. Chin Chin, you're not the same as before. You look. Chin Chin teased her. Am I more manly now? He Huan looked up with tears in her eyes. No, I'm not manly anymore. Chin Chin fell down. But after a while, she coughed. Actually, I'm married. Of course I'm looking for a man. His name is Lan Yu. He's a great man. He Huan was stunned. After a while, she said softly, He must be better than Chin Mo. Chin Chin laughed. She tugged at He Huan's hair. Actually, before you woke up, you and Chin Mo were in love. Really, you went through a lot. But in the end, you got together. It's not Rong Yu or anyone else. It's Chin Mo. As for the rest, you can ask Chin Mo to tell you later. Now, let's check. He Huan didn't say anything and followed Chin Chin to check. In the end, it was still the small blood clot at the back of her head. There was no sign of it getting bigger or smaller. Chin Chin put away her thoughts and smiled faintly. Fortunately, there's no big problem. She reached out and touched He Huan's little head. From now on, enjoy your 18 years. Not everyone has such an opportunity. Make good use of it. He Huan was a little shocked. She stared at Chin Chin for a long time. Chin Chin smiled and used Chin Mo's sharp tongue. He Xiaowan, you're 33 years old. Now you're 18 years old. Are you happy? He Huan was shocked again. After a long time, she finally said in a low voice, Who would wake up 15 years older and still be happy? Chin Chin said with a smile, You've enjoyed all these years. What kind of person is Chin Mo? All the women in B City want to have him. Are you still not satisfied? He Huan was tired and sat there quietly. After a while, she said in a low voice, I don't know if it's because of me. Maybe it's because we grew up together, so I don't feel much about marrying him. Chin Chin really wanted to look up to the sky and roar. To be honest, when she was young, Chin Chin was also very fond of her second brother. She had always wondered which woman was worthy of him, but now He Huan said that she didn't have any feelings for him. He wondered if Chin Mo would vomit blood if he found out. Although Chin Chin wanted to vomit blood, he still remembered the important matter at hand. He looked at the time and said, It's getting late. You should sleep for a while and recover your energy. Tomorrow morning, we will do a comprehensive checkup. He Huan nodded and pulled up the blanket to cover her head. She looked like she was throwing a tantrum. Chin Chin couldn't help but laugh. He Huan's temper was really the same as before. She reached out and rubbed Hee-hwan's head. "All right, time to sleep." Hee-hwan's head popped out a little and looked at her eagerly. "Want a goodnight kiss?" Chin smiled. Hee-hwan's reaction was to cover her head again. Chin smiled again and didn't say anything else. He took a small blanket and went to the sofa to lie down. Hee-hwan looked at her quietly and didn't say anything. She just lay there, quietly lying there. Then, tears welled up in the corner of her eyes. To Hee-hwan, Rong-yu was still hers. But when she woke up, he belonged to someone else and she belonged to Chin-mo. Chapter 46-29. This was unacceptable to Hee-hwan. In her memory, Chin-mo was particularly despicable. He always bullied her in all kinds of ways, and was fierce to her. He would take her to some places and force her to drink red beans. The person she hated the most was Chin-mo. Hee-hwan's tears never stopped as she thought about it. The more Rong-yu was, the better. How did he become someone else's? What was Rong-yu like in 19 years? Hee-hwan wanted to know, but she knew that if she couldn't find him after so many years, she lost Rong-yu. Hee-hwan tilted her face and rested it on the pillow. She couldn't fall asleep for a long time. It wasn't until the middle of the night when her light went out that she finally fell into a deep sleep. However, there were still a few drops of tears on her little face. When Chin-mo came over at 3 in the morning, he saw her crying. He stood there, knowing in his heart who she was crying for. However, he could only lie to himself and tell himself that it was only temporary. She would eventually think of him, and the person she loved was himself. However, he tried so hard to persuade her, but he couldn't. Because she didn't love him, she only had Rong-yu in her heart now. Late at night, Chin-mo stood quietly in front of Hee-hwan's bed. The fact that she could remember him was actually a happy ending, but he seemed to prefer that she didn't remember anyone than that she still liked Rong-yu. "Admit it, Chin-mo. You are jealous. You are crazily jealous of Rong-yu. A man that you feel is inferior to you in every way." There was a hint of disappointment in Chin-mo's eyes. Perhaps because of his gaze, Hee-hwan actually woke up. She opened her eyes and quietly stared at the man in front of the bed. She only opened her eyes a slit, and this made her eyes look completely black, making her look even more innocent. Chin-mo also stared at her. Finally, Hee-hwan spoke in a soft and fragile voice, "How did we get married?" Chin-mo's face was a little depressed, and his Adam's apple moved slightly. Then, he said softly, "Naturally, we got married. Hee-hwan, you used to like Rong-yu, but I've always liked you. Nothing has changed." Probably because he was too angry, he left immediately after he finished speaking. He didn't know whether he was angry at her for not remembering these days, or he was angry at himself for not protecting her. However, things had already happened and could not be undone. He didn't know how long it would take for her to remember. Chin said it might be a week, a month, or forever. Chin told him to be prepared. It would be best if Hee-hwan could fall in love with him again. Just like that, everything was resolved, because no one knew what would happen in the future. How could it be so easy to fall in love again? Chin-mo knew Hee-hwan too well. He sighed softly, and said nothing at last, but stood for a moment in the doorway. It was a sleepless night, so he decided to drive back to the company. In the underground parking lot, he met the so-called male fan. He only asked a few words casually and then made him disappear. The screams continued in the distance, but Chin-mo was very calm. He stood where he was, lit a cigarette, and smoked quietly. Secretary, he was also a poor person. President Chin actually let her arrange such a bloody thing. At this moment, secretary he came over and said in a low voice, "This person has been dealt with, but what did President Chin say to AI Jia?" Chapter 46:30. Qin Mo looked up at Secretary He. Secretary He had been with him for a long time, but she was still a little intimidated by Qin Mo's gaze. It was indescribably cold. She braced herself and said in a low voice, "Miss AI's movie has been completely banned and her past has been dug up. She's in a terrible state now. No one will dare to hire her to make a movie in the future and she will have to pay a huge sum of money for breaching the contract. President Chin, do you still want to continue?" With that, he threw away the cigarette but in his hand and got into the car. Qin Mo looked at her for a long time before saying, "Let's leave it at that for now." Secretary He stared at his back and sighed in his heart. President Chin had always treated AI Jia differently. He was still giving her some face. However, Secretary He did not know that this was already the biggest blow to AI Jia. It didn't matter if she didn't act in the movie, what mattered was that she had to lose money. Moreover, she had invested a lot of money in this commercial blockbuster and it was all gone in an instant. Most importantly, everyone in the industry knew that she had offended Qin Mo. Although they did not know the reason, everyone had a tacit understanding to boycott AI Jia. No one dared to work with her. Even if AI Jia wanted to borrow money to repay the debt, no one would be willing. In an instant, AI Jia had fallen from being a superstar to being miserable. As for why it was so miserable, she knew it in her heart. She had invested 300 million, plus the tens of millions for breaching the contract, she had lost everything. Her assets were also 300 to 400 million, but most of them were fixed assets, so she was missing 70 to 80 million. If it was in the past, it would not have been a problem. But it was different now. She was an A-list celebrity, but no one wanted her to be a spokesperson or participate in any commercial activities. In just 3 days, her life had changed dramatically. AI Jia began to feel anxious. She looked around for ways to beg people, and even to accompany people for a sum of money. Smiling, drinking, and accompanying people were things that she had disdained to do in the past. But even so, sometimes the company was in vain. She had been taken advantage of and drunk to the point of vomiting, but in the end, she had only signed 1 million. 1 million was nothing to AI Jia in the past, but now she was treated like that for the sake of 1 million. After being humiliated, AI Jia vomited as hard as she could in the bathroom. She lifted her head and looked at herself in the mirror. Deep down, she knew why she was in such a miserable state. She shouldn't have provoked He Huan, but she just couldn't accept it. Why did everyone else get happiness, but she didn't? She couldn't accept this. She washed herself thoroughly with cold water and then carefully fixed the makeup on her face. She knew in her heart that as long as Qin Mo did not forgive her, she would never have a chance to make a comeback. She had underestimated He Huan's position in Qin Mo's heart. It turned out that he loved her so much. However, judging from Qin Mo's revenge, something must have happened to He Huan. It was impossible for such a serious injury to be completely fine. AI Jia wanted to know what it was. However, the hospital was heavily guarded, and she had no way of getting close to He Huan. AI Jia thought that if something happened to He Huan, Qin Mo would never let him off. She suddenly smiled in front of the mirror. She wasn't the most unhappy person. It was Qin Mo. Qin Mo seemed to have the power to decide everyone's life and death. AI Jia's smile was a little strange. Ha ha ha, Qin Mo was also miserable. At least he was in pain now. She walked out, and in the hallway, she met the man who was accompanying her today. The man was hugging another woman, looking at her with a cautious expression. AI Jia suddenly felt a wave of nausea, but she forced herself to smile at the man. Oh, the woman beside the man kept smiling. She probably knew him because there was a touch of provocation in her eyes. In the past, Ai Jia would never have such a woman in her eyes, but now, the woman was young and easily defeated her. At that moment, Ai Jia felt that she was very old. She didn't think so before, but at this moment, she really realized that she was almost 40 years old and was no match for these young women. Was that why Qin Mo didn't care about her? Was it because He Huan was younger than her and looked like a little girl? Was that why he loved her so much? After the man left with the woman in his arms, Ai Jia finally couldn't help but rush back to the bathroom. She leaned on the sink and vomited. She almost vomited until her bile was gone. She raised her head and looked at herself in the mirror. Her face, which she had always been proud of, looked extraordinarily old at this moment. Perhaps she was really old. So, as she chuckled softly. Yes, I'm old. That's why I'm defeated. I lost to He Huan and to a woman who couldn't even be seen in public. Chapter 46-31. Memorize in a second. When Ai Jia walked out of the clubhouse, the lights on the streets were already waning. She felt lost on the streets. She had become famous at a young age and was a well-deserved Best Actress. She had always been surrounded by people. She had never felt so lonely before. Moreover, after such an unbearable thing had happened, he felt even more unbearable. She walked to her car and opened the door. Just as she was about to get in, Ai Jia's gaze suddenly froze. She looked at the man and woman in front of her quietly. She was very familiar with that woman. She could recognize her even if she turned into ashes. It was Ai Mengmeng. Ai Mengmeng, who she had thought could no longer make a comeback, was her good sister, a village girl who had crawled out of a ravine. At this moment, she was walking shoulder to shoulder with Rongyu. She was wearing a man's jacket and holding a skewer in her hand. She was eating as she walked. The man beside her was helping her with her handbag. His expression was gentle and there was even a hint of affection in his eyes. Ai Jia looked at them quietly. Looking at Ai Mingming's happiness, her eyes were a little sore and a little bitter. She looked down and saw herself in a long red dress in the middle of the night. If it had been in the past, it would have been dazzling and eye-catching. But now, she felt like she was in a sorry state. She was in a sorry state. She gritted her teeth and was about to leave when she looked up to find Ai Mengmeng looking at her. Ai Mingming's gaze was a little complicated. But it wasn't the adoration or servility like before. There wasn't even fear. All that was left was calmness. Ai Jia looked at Ai Mengmeng quietly too. Their eyes met. Ai Jia thought to herself, why was Ai Mengmeng not afraid of me? Was it because King Entertainment was backing her up? But Ai Jia had never thought that it wasn't because of King Entertainment, but because of Rongyu. She had Rongyu's companionship and love. The missing part of Ai Mingming's heart had been filled by life after marriage. In her heart, she was no worse than Ai Jia. She even had something that Ai Jia didn't have. After a long time, Ai Mengmeng looked away and raised her head to meet Rongyu's eyes. She smiled softly. There was relief in that small smile. She didn't hate Ai Jia anymore. It was because of these hurts that she had met Rongyu, the person she liked. The unbearable pain and hurt in the past had now become beautiful, because they had met again. Rongyu lowered his head and silently looked at his little wife. Why are you suddenly smiling so foolishly? Ai Mengmeng shook her head. No. It's just that I suddenly feel that you're pretty. Rongyu laughed. He reached out and gently pinched her nose. Why did you suddenly say such nice things? That's not like you, Mrs. Young. Ai Meng Meng wrinkled her nose slightly. You know about it again. After a pause, he continued, I just think that you're good-looking. Rong Yu chuckled delightedly. I'm just accompanying you out for a barbecue skewer, and you're already speaking so nicely. If there's anything else, wouldn't Mrs. Rong have something better to say? Ai Meng Meng glanced at him, and her entire little face became lively. Actually, she was not a very beautiful girl, but married life was really wonderful. Even her entire appearance looked much more dazzling than before. This was probably the power of love. She looked at him and smiled, and he smiled back. In the end, maybe it was because of love, she couldn't help but throw herself into his arms. Chapter 46-32. Memorize in the middle of the night, Rong Yu suddenly felt warm. Then, he looked down at his arms. The little girl who gave him warmth. Meng Meng always thought that he was the one taking care of her in life, but she did not know that in fact, he was the one who relied on her. After such a long time, she had already become a part of his life. Sometimes in the middle of the night, when he suddenly woke up, he would quietly look at her under the faint moonlight. At that time, he would think, if not for Meng Meng, what would he be like now? He probably wasn't happy. Every day, he wrote scripts, wrote other people's love stories, and then he missed a woman who didn't belong to him. And now that he had Meng Meng, how happy he was, Meng Meng did not know. She also did not know that she had the ability to make him happy. She was simply a little fool. Now that this little fool had bumped into his arms, he was caught off guard. His originally calm heart suddenly became boiling hot. He wanted to kiss her, but they were on the street, so he was a little distressed. He didn't know what to do, how to express his emotions. Only, he slowly tightened his arms, carefully hugging her in his embrace, treasuring her. Rong Yu lowered his head and looked at her raised face. His voice was slightly hoarse. Why are you suddenly acting like a spoiled child? Ai Meng Meng pressed her face against his neck. It was a little cold, but after a while, it became warm again. After staying like this for a while, she whispered, I'm not acting coquettishly. I just want to feel your warmth. As she spoke, her brows were especially delicate and pretty, indescribably adorable. No matter how much he restrained himself, he couldn't help but lower his head and kiss her. This kiss was especially warm in the middle of the night. Ai Meng Meng looked at him quietly. After a long time, she murmured, Do you like me? His answer was to gently tug at her hair and helplessly say, What do you think, Mrs. Rong? Ai Meng Meng was still looking at him. There was a hint of a smile in her eyes, as well as the unique spirit of a young girl. Her little lips even curled up slightly. I think you like me. After saying that, she looked at him. Rong Yu patted her gently and said briskly, Let's go home. He pressed down on her shoulders and gently led her forward. Ai Meng Meng continued to eat the skewers in her hands. As she ate, she blurted out, I haven't finished eating yet. Just like a piglet. Rong Yu sighed softly. Fortunately, I'm only raising one. After Ai Meng Meng finished eating, she threw the skewer away and looked at him strangely. What's wrong? Rong Yu chuckled. Why do I feel that Mrs. Rong has a request? Ai Meng Meng snorted softly. It's definitely not what you think. He smiled happily. If not, you can tell me about it. I don't want to say it. Ai Meng Meng snorted, then put his arm around her waist and walked towards the apartment. It's getting late. It's time for old people to sleep. He chuckled. Are you sure I'm an old man? For some reason, Ai Meng Meng's face turned red. He didn't say anything overboard, but she was a little shy. However, he did not know that it was because he liked her that he would be like this. Ronyu, I think I like you too. She suddenly stopped and whispered. Mr. Rong looked at her with amusement. Be reserved, Mrs. Rong. Ai Meng Meng bit her lower lip and looked down. It was eaten by the puppy. Chapter 46-33. It's free to read. Ronyu chuckled. Oh, the puppy tried a lot of things just now. Ai Meng Meng immediately exploded. I'm not a puppy. Aren't you? He patted her head. The puppy has gone home. Aren't you? He stroked her little head. The puppy has gone home. Ai Meng Meng didn't move. Ronyu chuckled again. You're not going home. Then I'll go find another puppy. She tugged at his hand. A puppy is a puppy. Ronyu laughed again. Where's your restraint? Where's your backbone? I don't need it anymore, she said sulkily. Ronyu was even happier. He kissed her forehead and said, Oh, you have me. That's enough. She blushed again. Shameless. Ronyu only smiled. After they left, Ai Jia still stood there in the cold wind and watched them leave. She noticed that Ai Meng Meng had only glanced at her for a moment. After that, she didn't look at her anymore. Only Ronyu. Ai Jia didn't know what kind of situation could make someone forget their pain so quickly. She had always thought that Ai Meng Meng would be afraid when she saw her, but she didn't. She was a woman immersed in happiness. There was a trace of hatred in Ai Jia's eyes. This little bitch didn't care about him at all. She had forgotten who she was. Ronyu brought Ai Meng Meng home. After all, his health wasn't good, so he immediately took a hot bath. Ai Meng Meng cleaned up the room alone. As she thought about it, she couldn't help but smile. But later, she couldn't help but think of Ai Jia. She used to admire her, but now she was afraid of her. She also noticed that Ai Jia was different from before. She looked haggard and only wore a long dress on such a cold day. She knew that her movies had been taken off the shelves, banned in various ways, and owed a lot of money. That was probably why she came out to socialize. Ai Meng Meng didn't feel happy. Those fame and fortune fairs weren't that important to her anymore. Perhaps she was a little sad, but she didn't know if it was for herself or for someone else. She was lost in her thoughts and did not notice Ronyu coming out. In the warm room, Ronyu was wearing a bathrobe. As soon as he walked out of the bathroom, he saw his wife daydreaming while making the bed. He walked over and hugged her gently from behind, his head lowered against her neck. What are you thinking about? Ai Meng Meng was shocked and tilted her head. You've recovered. He chuckled. I'm asking, what are you thinking about? No. She subconsciously avoided it and lowered her eyes to hide herself. However, they had been husband and wife for a long time after all. How could he not know what she was thinking? He was still hugging her, and his voice was hoarse. He said hesitantly, I think I saw Ai Jia in the parking lot just now. Just as he finished speaking, the body in his arms stiffened. What's wrong? Ronyu whispered into her ear. Ai Meng Meng's mind was in a mess. Nothing, I'm going to take a shower. He had only taken 2 steps when his arm was caught. She turned her head and bit her lips. Ronyu. He smiled faintly. It won't take too long. Accompany me. She stared at him and finally understood what he meant. She had already forgotten about the previous topic. She was sure that he had mentioned Ai Jia unintentionally and did not think too much about it. She heaved a sigh of relief and looked at him. I'll take a shower first. Chapter 46-34. Memorize. Yu looked at her quietly, then smiled. Go. I'll make the bed. Only then did Ai Meng Meng notice that she hadn't finished her work. She wanted to say that she would do it, but she really needed to be alone for a while to calm down. So she nodded and immediately ran into the bathroom, closing the door. At a place where she could not see, Yu was standing there with an unfathomable gaze. There were many things that Meng Meng did not know. For example, Ai Jia offended Qin Mo. For example, He Huan was hospitalized. How was she now? Even he himself did not know. Meng Meng didn't know any of that. Yu was a scriptwriter. He had the most sensitive intuition. When he mentioned Ai Jia just now, Meng Meng seemed to have a big reaction. Moreover, their surnames were all Ai. Yu was suspicious, but he did not want to alarm her. The previous incident might have something to do with Ai Jia. Just thinking about it made his heart ache a little, an indescribable feeling. He was her husband, but he had never been able to help her investigate, and could only accompany her to heal. He did not want to open her scars, but he was afraid that those injuries would come again. He lit a cigarette and stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, smoking from time to time in frustration. In fact, he had quit smoking for a long time, but now he needed a cigarette to calm down. He had to think about how to face his little wife and how to calm her down. There were too many things he needed to think about. When Ai Meng Meng walked out, she saw him smoking. Startled, she immediately snatched the cigarette from his hand and said disapprovingly, "The doctor said you can't smoke." Yu turned his head and laughed. His voice was very hoarse. "The doctor said that I can't have a woman yet." After he said that, Ai Meng Meng blushed and her heart raced. She bit her lower lip and said, "You're spouting nonsense again." But he soon realized something and asked softly, "Is there something on your mind?" Yu held her gently in his arms and rested his chin on her hair. His voice was deep and hoarse. "The last time I went to your hometown, you must have had a hard time." Ai Meng Meng looked at him. "Why did you suddenly think of this?" He raised the cigarette in his hand again. "You're even smoking." Yu laughed. "So you're taking care of it now?" She reached out and gently tugged at his collar. "Don't I have the right?" "Probably." He chuckled and kissed her. After a long time, Yu found that she had not fallen asleep. He patted her shoulder and asked, "What are you thinking about?" Ai Meng Meng turned her head, bit her lip and stared at him for a while. "I'm thinking about my childhood. It was really hard at that time, even harder than what you saw last time." Her voice was full of memories. It was hard to even eat meat during the New Year. Yu suddenly felt very sad. He hugged her shoulders and said, "It won't happen again. I will take care of you. All of them have meat to eat?" She asked hesitantly. His eyes were very clear, and there was always some indescribable meaning in them. Ai Meng Meng did not know why, but she blushed again. She reached out and pulled up the blanket. "I'm going to sleep." The liquid chuckled and tugged at her hair. "Aren't you afraid that you can't breathe?" After a while, she came over and hugged his shoulders again. She leaned her head gently against his. "Are you still going to smoke in the future?" "Huh?" He lowered his head. Chapter 46-35. Ai Mingming's voice was very low. "I want you to be well." She looked up at him. "You're so good." Yu chuckled. "What's so good about me?" Ai Mingming's eyes were watery as she glanced at him. After that, they stopped talking and went to sleep together. But that night was not a peaceful one for the man. After his little wife fell asleep, Rong-yu gently covered her with the blanket and went to the study. He turned on the computer and typed the name AI Jia into the browser. His intuition told him that this person was inextricably linked to his wife. Especially tonight, when he saw AI Jia, he felt that she looked 60% similar to AI Meng Meng. Rong-yu subconsciously rejected this possibility. But he was a man, and as a man, he would not run away from reality. Instead, he would do everything he could to protect his woman. Of course, when the information about AI Jia appeared on the computer, it was all official. There was nothing he wanted to know. She had grown up in a wealthy family and had a smooth sailing career. She had entered the entertainment industry and developed her career abroad. No matter how he looked at it, it did not seem to be related to AI Meng Meng. But Rong-yu's intuition told him that it was not that simple. AI Meng Meng's nervousness was obvious tonight. She had an inexplicable fear of AI Jia. Rong-yu became more and more uncertain. He reached for his phone and dialed a number. A few seconds later, the call went through. President Qin, can you help me investigate AI Jia? Qin Mo was silent for a while before he said in a low voice, why do you want to investigate? I suspect that she is related to AI Meng Meng. Rong-yu told him what had happened tonight. Qin Mo's voice was very low. I can help you. Thank you. Rong-yu then asked, how is He Huan now? This time, Qin Mo was silent for a long time. After a long time, he said bitterly, she has returned to when she was 18 years old. He then hung up the phone. Rong-yu was a little shocked. 18 years old was the age when he and He Huan liked each other. He Huan had returned to the past. The reason why Qin Mo was willing to tell him was probably because he had other motives. After thinking about it carefully, he understood everything in his heart. Some bitterness, some faint restlessness, towards that period of youth. However, he already had a wife. He Huan was just a memory. He went back. He couldn't. Therefore, he interpreted Qin Mo's words as a threat or a declaration. What they wanted was for him to take a stand. Rong-yu picked up another cigarette, lit it, and smoked gently. His heart was aching. AI Meng Meng stood by the door in shock. She did not expect Rong-yu to investigate AI Jia behind her back. She thought he did not suspect anything. So, she was extremely flustered and did not know what to do. After some time, Rong-yu got up and turned around, just in time to see her standing outside the door. He stared blankly for a moment before saying immediately, why aren't you asleep? You said you don't smoke. AI Meng Meng said softly. Rong-yu smiled and said, I'm feeling a little dizzy. Come here and have a smoke. Are you just here to smoke? She asked very softly. Rong-yu smiled slightly. Of course. What else? Oh yeah, how long have you been standing here? Suddenly, AI Meng Meng felt a little tired and said very softly, can you not investigate? Chapter 46-36. It's free. Rong-yu looked at her quietly and said slowly, you heard it. Are you willing to tell me? AI Meng Meng pursed her lips and said, it's getting late. I want to sleep. AI Meng Meng pursed her lips and said, it's getting late. I want to sleep. Meng Meng. Rong-yu stopped her just as she was about to leave. AI Meng Meng's body froze. She turned her head slowly and looked at Rong-yu silently. After a long time, she said softly, Rong-yu, why won't you let me go? Why do you have to look into the past? It's not like you don't know that it's not a good past. She pressed her fingers against her heart and said softly, "Every time I'm mentioned, it hurts. Ronyu, don't you know that I just want to live a normal life? Is that wrong?" Ronyu looked at her quietly and said after a long time, "But have you ever thought that if you run away, others will let you go? I know you want to live a peaceful life, but sometimes, you can't just live a peaceful life." Ai Meng Meng bit her lips and shook her head desperately. After a long time, she whispered, "Don't force me, Ronyu. Don't force me." She kept shaking her head and stepped back. Ronyu got up and walked towards her. His expression was a little deep. It was an expression that Ai Meng Meng had never seen before. And it was a man's unique expression. It was strong and aggressive. In the past, Ronyu had never shown such an expression. Ai Meng Meng felt that it was dangerous. She instinctively wanted to run, but Ronyu reached out and grabbed her. He held her wrist. She had never known that he was so strong. Ai Meng Meng bit her lips. "Ronyu, you're hurting me." He stared into her eyes and pulled her over forcefully. He reached out and pressed her shoulder. "If you feel pain like this, it will be even more painful when you're hurt by someone else." He stared at her and she had nowhere to run. Ai Meng Meng looked into his eyes and she had never felt so vulnerable before. She felt that she was loved by him and she loved him too. Everyone's injuries added up couldn't compare to his casual words. It was probably because he cared too much. Ai Meng Meng stared at him, but she swung her hand forcefully, trying to shake him off. However, how could she get rid of Ronyu so easily? His fingers were still holding onto her arm, and his expression was a little ugly. Ai Meng Meng bit her lips. "Ronyu, didn't you say you wanted to buy a piece of land?" His expression became even more unsightly. "Do you want to be a coward?" Ai Meng Meng bit her lips and her eyes were a little watery. "Ronyu, are you reluctant to part with this prosperity?" Ronyu looked at her quietly and smiled faintly. "It's not that I don't want to, but do you really think you'll be safe if you hide? If you think it's okay, we can leave here tonight. But what I want to tell you is that Huan is now in the hospital. She lost her memory because she was pushed. Who do you think did it?" Ai Ming Ming's face was pale and her lips were trembling. After a long time, she spat out a few words, "Is it Ai Jia?" He nodded. "Yes, it's what you think." He paused again. "So now you still want to say that you want to hide?" He said softly, "Ai Jia is a lunatic. Huan dared to do anything with Qin Mo's protection, let alone you and me. Meng Meng, it's useless no matter where you hide." Chapter 46-37. He continued softly, "Ai Jia is a lunatic. She dared to do anything even when she had Qin Mo to protect her, let alone you and me. Meng Meng, it's useless no matter where you hide." He wasn't trying to belittle himself, but he had a hunch that Ai Jia had something on Ai Meng Meng. There must be a complicated relationship between the two of them. If Ronyu didn't love her that much, he wouldn't have asked. However, he was her husband. She had been hurt so badly in the past, and no one could guarantee her future. As a man, he had the responsibility to protect her. A lunatic like Ai Jia wouldn't let anyone off. Ai Meng Meng looked at him in a daze and muttered, "Ronyu, Ai Jia is a lunatic. She can do anything. I'm scared." Ronyu stared at her for a long time before he slowly let go of her hand and held her hand instead. Ai Mingming's hand was cold, but Ronyu's hand was warm. This warmth slowly warmed her up. Ai Meng Meng raised her head and said in a dreamy voice, "Ronyu, you don't want to know this story. I'm far worse than you think. As she said that, she couldn't stand the past and kept shaking her head. In AI Mingming's heart, she could only accept her current life with Rongyu. She had selectively filtered out the past. At this moment, just thinking about the past made her feel sorry for Rongyu. When she was still in her hometown, she was, suddenly, Meng thought of something and her face turned pale. Rongyu looked at her and said in a low voice, "What's wrong?" Mingming's fingers grabbed his hand so tightly that her nails almost dug into his flesh. Mingming's expression was distorted and she looked like she was about to break down. Rongyu frowned and hugged her. Meng. Mingming's expression was especially ugly. She stared at Rongyu's face and said in a trembling voice, "My whole life was ruined by her. How could she be so cruel? I'm her biological sister. How could she do this to me?" After saying the last word, she finally couldn't hold back her tears. He murmured, "How could she do this to me?" Rong-yu's heart ached. He held her in his arms to comfort her. She couldn't stop trembling, and after an unknown amount of time, she slowly calmed down. Rong-yu brought her to the study, turned the heater to the maximum, and poured her a cup of hot cocoa. Then he sat opposite her. Maybe it was because of the warmth, or maybe it was because she drank half a cup of hot cocoa, but her mood slowly calmed down. Rong-yu's voice was very soft. "Now, can you tell me?" Meng had calmed down a lot. She held a cup of hot cocoa in her hands. She pursed her lips and said softly, "Jia was adopted from my family. I was still young then, probably less than 2 years old. Jia was about 7 or 8 years old then. I have no memory of it. I always thought that I was the only child in my family until Jia showed up in my hometown." Rong-yu looked at her quietly. He knew that what was going to happen next would not be very pleasant, or perhaps it would be a lifetime of pain for Meng. That was what Rong-yu's intuition told him. The scumbag who molested her was probably sent by Jia. Mingming's voice was very calm, but there was a hint of trembling in it. Chapter 46-38. Memorize. Mingming's voice was calm, but there was a hint of trembling in it. She said very softly, "The first time she came, I refused. I said I didn't want to leave home. I didn't want to leave my parents." Then, there was a trace of confusion in her eyes. She looked at Rong-yu quietly and said softly, "Then something happened to me. That scum was arrested and sentenced to 6 years in prison. He might be out by now. After that incident, I followed Jia to be city. You know everything that happened after that. Everything is so coincidental. You suspect." Rong-yu's voice was slightly low. "You suspect that Jia sent someone to do this so that you won't be able to stay here anymore, right?" Meng bit her lip and nodded lightly. Rong-yu got up from the sofa, leaned over, and squatted in front of her. He placed his hand on the back of her hand and gently embraced it. His voice was even hoarser. "It's all in the past. Meng, it's all in the past." Meng was still looking at him. She bit her lip and said, "If Jia did it, I can't forgive myself. I helped her do so many bad things, but in the end, she hurt me. Also, the thing that I was found out about was also her doing." At this point, Mingming's expression became a little dazed. "Rong-yu, I will never forget that day. I will never forget the feeling of being pressed down by someone and watching the needle pierce into my skin." Her body trembled slightly as she looked into Rong-yu's eyes. "That was the darkest moment of my life. I was extremely afraid. When I woke up, everything was gone. I've worked so hard for so long, but I can't even compare to Jia's injection. I don't know why she treats me like this. Even if I'm not obedient, she's my sister. Why would she treat me like this? Ai Meng Meng slightly closed her eyes, and there was a touch of tears at the corner of her eyes. I have always felt that she is a good person, so I am willing to do many things for her. I don't understand how she can be so heartless. For a long time after that, she was afraid even when she slept. She often woke up in the middle of the night. She always felt that there was someone in her room who would press her down at any time and hit her with those harmful things again. She was terrified. Later, she did not dare to turn off the light again, because she could not sleep if she did. She was afraid that those harmful things would come out again. It was only when Rongyu appeared that she was no longer afraid. And now, when she recalled those past events, her whole body still trembled. He couldn't stop his fear. Her hand was held by Rongyu. Rongyu's voice was very low. You have me now. She can't hurt you anymore. Ai Mingming's eyes were a little listless. After a long time, she softly asked, Rongyu, can we change places to live? Without waiting for him to answer, she reached out and gently hugged herself. I'm scared. I'm really scared. I'm scared that I'll be squeezed in her hands like a little bug. I'll die easily. In the past, it didn't matter if she died or not, but now she had Rongyu. They had a present and a future. Perhaps one day, they could even have a child, so Ai Meng Meng couldn't bear to die. She wanted to leave this place with him and stay away from Ai Jia. When she finished speaking, Rongyu looked at her quietly. Ai Meng Meng bit her lips and said softly, You don't agree. Don't you want to live somewhere else with me? Chapter 46-39. Memorize. Rongyu sighed. It's not that I don't agree, but Meng Meng, are you really going to let her go even if you run away like this? Ai Meng Meng bit her lips so hard that she almost bled. After a long time, she finally said in a low voice, I don't want to have anything to do with her anymore. Rongyu, I don't want to remember the past. Just pretend that she never existed. Rongyu sighed again. You. He reached out and ruffled her hair. If this is what you want, we can live in another place. There's no need to move to the deep mountains and forests. That's not realistic, is it? Ai Meng Meng looked straight at him. He couldn't believe that Rongyu would agree to it. She thought, he will not, she thought, he will try to persuade himself to face. But he didn't. He said he was willing to leave. She looked at Rongyu and didn't know what to say. Rongyu just smiled warmly and said, Well, it's a deal. He picked up his phone and looked at the time. It's getting late. Time to sleep. Ai Meng Meng responded with an oh, and had completely calmed down. Indeed, as she had said, as long as Ai Jia was not in front of her, as long as she did not think about those things, she would forget about them. All she wanted was an ordinary happiness. Ai Meng Meng bit her lip and looked at him. Rongyu took her hand and got up. All right, let's go to sleep. Only then did she follow him into the bedroom. Ai Meng Meng calmed down, but because of Rongyu's worry, she had a high fever in the second half of the night. At about 8 in the morning, Ai Meng Meng felt that the person beside her was very hot. She was shocked and immediately sat up. She reached out her hand and felt Rongyu's forehead burning. His face was abnormally flushed. He has a high fever. Ai Meng Meng shook him. Rongyu. Rongyu struggled to open his eyes, his voice hoarse. What's wrong? Ai Meng Meng looked like she was about to cry. You have a fever. It's very hot. I'll go get the thermometer. She had been taking care of him for a long time. She was panicking, but she knew what to do now. Crying was the most useless thing, but she chose to do things while crying. Soon, she brought the thermometer over and swiftly placed it under Ron-Yu's armpit. After everything was done, she looked up at him and asked, "How are you feeling?" Ron-Yu was a little weak, and he felt very uncomfortable and dizzy. However, he still gave her a reassuring smile. "It's all right. I'm not that delicate." Ai Meng didn't say anything. She just stared at the thermometer, as if that little thing could decide her fate. Ron-Yu also looked at her and only smiled. About 2 minutes later, she carefully pulled it out. When it touched his skin, she felt an unnatural heat. Ai Mingming's nose turned sour. She suddenly regretted it. She shouldn't have been standing at the door last night. If she hadn't gone out to order skewers, she wouldn't have met Ai Jia and Ron-Yu wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable state. Ai Mingming's heart was filled with unspeakable regret. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked down at the thermometer. 40 degrees. Her heart sank. To Ron-Yu, this temperature was fatal. She had to go to the hospital immediately. "Ron-Yu, can you walk?" "If you can, I'll drive to the hospital now." She held him and asked softly. Ron-Yu closed his eyes slightly and nodded gently. "I should be able to rest for a while." Chapter 46-40. Ron-Yu closed his eyes slightly and nodded gently. "I should be fine after resting for a while." Probably because he was very weak, he didn't open his eyes. He just moved his hand and finally found her hand. He held it gently and said in a hoarse and gentle voice, "Are you crying, silly?" Ai Meng sniffled. "I'm not crying. I'll get some clothes." "Ron-Yu, don't sleep. Wait for me." He nodded and squeezed her hand. However, when Ai Meng brought the clothes back, she saw Ron-Yu's head tilted to the side and his face seemed to be even redder. No matter how she called him, he couldn't wake up. He fell into a coma. In the chaos, Ai Meng didn't know if she cried or who she called. She didn't even know how long it took for her to go to the hospital. When Qin Chen came out of the examination room, he told her that Ron-Yu had acute pneumonia because of the cold and fatigue. Ai Meng bit her lip and couldn't speak for a long time. His life is not in danger, but he will not be able to handle the torment. It's best if he does not work and focuses on resting. Qin Chen scrolled through the list and then raised his eyes. Is he still writing the script? Ai Meng shook her head. I don't think so. Qin Chen's eyes deepened. You don't know. Ron-Yu can't be tired. Ai Meng looked down. I'll tell him. Qin Chen smiled faintly and then finished writing the list. He asked the nurse to get the medicine and drip. Then he continued to talk to Ai Meng. He has to stay for a week this time. It's a bit serious. She paused. Ron-Yu's health is very poor. It's best not to travel and stay in B City. Ai Ming's heart skipped a beat. Then she asked Qin Chen, he can't travel. Qin Chen smiled. Of course, no one can take responsibility if there's a problem with his body. Besides, his illness can only be controlled in Xingyuan. Staying in B City is the best choice. Well, I usually don't go abroad. Since many years ago, she hadn't gone abroad. Everyone had a little secret in their heart, and Qin Chen was no exception. As for this, Ron-Yu did not know either. Husband and wife, it's good to have some secrets. After Qin Chen finished speaking, Ai Meng said in a daze, we were just talking about settling down in H City last night. Chin Chen glanced at her and smiled. But there are no doctors suitable for Rongyu in City H. His gaze was fixed on Ai Mang Mang. Then, he sighed. I don't mean anything else, but Rongyu and He Huan had an affair before. Qin Mo will definitely take care of him. Do as you see fit. Ai Mang Mang was stunned again. Then, she returned to the ward. Rongyu was momentarily conscious. When he saw her enter, he smiled weakly. However, he didn't say anything. Ai Mang Mang knew that he was suffering. His illness had been tormenting him. Perhaps he often felt uncomfortable, but he had to bear it alone. Only she felt very happy. Because everything she enjoyed was exchanged with Rongyu's health. Qin Chen asked her if Rongyu had written a script. She didn't know, but now that she thought about it, he must have written it so that she could live a better life. Suddenly, she felt that she was very selfish. He was selfish to the extreme. Ai Mang Mang sat beside him and held his hand. His hand was very hot. Rongyu looked at her quietly. Ai Ming Ming's voice was very low. Rongyu, we won't move. We'll stay and be city. He still looked at her gently. After a long time, he smiled weakly. Why did you change your mind? Chapter 46-41. Updated quickly, he was still looking at her gently. After a long while, he smiled weakly. Why did you change your mind? Ai Mang Mang looked at him too. Suddenly, she shook her head forcefully. She couldn't stand herself. He was so nice to her, always thinking about her, but she was still living in the past. Her voice was very soft. No, I just can't bear to leave here. Rongyu's gaze was gentle, but it seemed to be able to see through her. He remained silent for a long time before holding her hand. We'll talk about it when we get home. Ai Mang Mang shook her head vigorously. Rongyu, I'm not leaving. I'll stay here and not go anywhere. Listen to me this time. He laughed, then closed his eyes again. At this moment, the nurses came over and saw Rongyu closing his eyes while Ai Mang Mang was crying. They were veterans in the hospital and the nurses had seen them make a fool of themselves before. This time, they wouldn't let go of the opportunity to tease them. Why are you crying again? The tap water is free too. Rongyu was very famous. He was talented and handsome. Ai Ming Ming's recent movie was also very popular. In the past, many people did not like her, but after this movie, Ai Mang Mang had completely changed. Now that she was watching over Rongyu, crying so miserably, the nurses felt that this girl was really cute and adorable. Ai Mang Mang felt very embarrassed after the nurses teased her. Her eyes were red and she didn't dare to cry anymore. She got up and asked the nurse to start an 4-drip. When she got up, Rongyu pulled her hand but didn't say anything. After the 4-drip, Rongyu's fever finally subsided. However, he looked very tired and kept sleeping. And Ai Mang Mang kept staring at his eyes, afraid that he would disappear. Just like that, he would never wake up. Time passed bit by bit, like a torturous torture. She didn't eat or sleep, just watching over him. She would immediately look at him if there was any movement, afraid that she would miss it. She stayed by his side until the evening before Rongyu woke up. When he woke up, he saw Ai Mang Mang sitting there, her eyes red. His Adam's apple moved and his voice was especially hoarse. Have you eaten? At first, she was stunned, but then she shook her head. I'm not hungry. What time is it? Rongyu turned his head. Ai Mang Mang bit her lower lip. It's 5 in the afternoon. Rongyu looked out of the window quietly as if he was lost in thought. After a while, he whispered, "It's getting dark. I've slept for the whole day. What happened today?" As he spoke, he turned his head back and gazed at her quietly. Ai Meng Meng shook her head. Rong Yu smiled again. "It's so late, and you're not hungry. How can there be such a stupid person?" "I'm not stupid," she said stupidly. Rong Yu was probably too tired. He closed his eyes and said, "I'm hungry. Go get 2 servings of rice and we'll eat together." Hearing that he wanted to eat, Ai Meng Meng immediately ordered a meal. After ordering dinner, Rong Yu fell asleep again. She waited patiently, then wrung out a towel and rubbed him down. Dinner was served, but Rong Yu still did not wake up. Even Qin Chen was alarmed. He came over to check and said meaningfully, "He's probably too tired." For some reason, Ai Meng Meng felt a little guilty. Qin Chen did not say anything more. After all, this was a matter between husband and wife. Getting sick was not like becoming a monk. Chapter 46-42. It's free. Qin Chen straightened up and said with a smile, "Be more restrained in the future." Ai Mingming's face immediately heated up, but no matter how embarrassed she was, Rong Yu's health was still her top priority. Ai Mingming's face immediately became hot, but no matter how embarrassed she was, Rong Yu's health was still the top priority. Qin Chen regained his relaxed posture. "Didn't I say that he's just too tired?" Qin Chen regained his relaxed posture. "Didn't I say it? He's just too tired." Ai Meng Meng was no longer nervous, but her face was even redder. Qin Chen went out first, mainly because Ai Meng Meng looked too nervous. After Qin Chen left, Ai Meng Meng looked at Rong Yu, who was lying on the bed. After Qin Chen left, Ai Meng Meng quietly looked at Rong Yu, who was lying on the bed. Rong Yu's face was abnormally red. Ai Meng Meng was a little worried, so she reached out to touch him again. It was still very hot. She thought about it and finally wrung a towel to wipe his body to lower his temperature. The 2 breakfasts were left there until they turned cold. Ai Meng Meng waited until late at night before Rong Yu woke up. This time, he really woke up. He opened his eyes and saw Ai Meng Meng sitting in front of him. Her eyes were already red. Rong Yu said softly, "Did you not eat at all?" Ai Meng Meng stared at him for a long time before saying, "I wanted to wait for you to eat together." Rong Yu's lips moved slightly, and he smiled faintly. "How can you be so silly? What if I don't wake up for 3 days and you don't eat for 3 days? Ai Meng Meng still looked at him, and after a long time, she bit her lip and said, "Then I won't eat for 3 days." Rong Yu's smile deepened, but there was a hint of heartache in his smile. He said in a low voice, "How can there be such a silly girl like you?" Ai Meng Meng bit her lower lip. "Do you not like silly girls?" Rong Yu leaned his head against the pillow and looked at her quietly. There was a faint smile on his young face. "Maybe I just like silly girls." Ai Meng Meng continued to stare at him, unable to say anything for a long time. Rong Yu propped himself up with his hand and slowly sat up. He wiped his face and then said in a relaxed manner, "I'm a bit hungry. Bring the food over." Ai Meng Meng nodded and went to get it. But after a while, she bit her lip and said, "It seems to be cold." Rong Yu smiled and went to warm it up. Ai Meng Meng nodded and immediately took it over to warm it up. When she returned, Rong Yu was already up. He was sitting on the sofa with a small table in front of him. Ai Meng Meng walked over and prepared the food. She handed it to Rong Yu and asked, "Are you feeling better now?" "It's nothing." Rong Yu smiled faintly and continued eating. The 2 of them had a quiet meal together, and Rongyu's spirit was much better. However, his physical strength was still not very good. He only accompanied her for a while before falling asleep again. Ai Meng Meng kept watch until midnight. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and took a nap with him. When she woke up, it was already dawn. Rongyu was not on the bed. Ai Meng Meng was shocked and immediately looked around. Then she saw Rongyu sitting on the sofa in front of the window. He was holding a laptop in his hands, and his long and beautiful fingers were typing on it. Her nose instantly turned sour. Because she remembered what Qin Chen had said. Rongyu had actually been writing a script all this time to give her a better life. Chapter 46-43. At that moment, Ai Meng Meng felt that she was extremely selfish. It was as if she had sucked away all of Rongyu's energy like a vampire. And the only thing she could do for him was to stay by his side when he was tired and sick, and accompany him for a meal. That was all. Ai Meng Meng's heart was extremely sad. She walked over softly. Standing behind Rongyu. Rongyu was probably too focused as he was still typing on the keyboard of his laptop. Ai Meng Meng's pain instantly reached its peak. She leaned over gently and pressed her face against his back. She hugged his waist and said in a very, very soft voice, "Rongyu, I'm sorry." When she said those words, she was especially sad, so her voice was a little hoarse and even a little choked up. Rongyu's body froze for a moment, then he turned his head, but he couldn't see her. His voice was also especially gentle, very, very soft. "What's wrong?" Ai Meng Meng shook her head with all her might. Nothing. She was behind him, feeling extremely tormented. She wanted to endure it, but she couldn't. She laid her whole body on his back and cried. Rongyu froze for a moment. Then, he put down the work in his hands and reached behind him. Finally, he caught her hand and gently pulled her to sit next to him. Ai Meng Meng was still blinking and looked at Rongyu innocently. Rongyu also looked at her and smiled slightly. "You must be thinking that I'm working so hard for you, right?" Ai Meng Meng didn't say anything, but that was probably what she was thinking. Rongyu smiled lightly and reached out to touch her face. "I like to write. Of course, this can be exchanged for a generous reward and let us live a better life." Ai Meng Meng bit her lip. "I can save a little. I can also not order takeout. I can cook for myself. I can even go to work. I can do any kind of work." As she said that, she leaned her head on his shoulder and murmured softly, "Rongyu, I don't want you to work so hard." She was afraid that his body couldn't take it. She was afraid that he wouldn't be able to grow old with her. If life was consumed by a single person, then what was the point? Ai Meng Meng leaned against him. Rongyu seemed to understand something and looked at her. After a long time, he sighed, "How can I bear to do that?" He patted her shoulder and said, "Go and prepare breakfast for me. I'll write for a while." Ai Meng Meng glared at him. A moment later, she suddenly put away the notebook in front of him and said, "You're not allowed to write anymore. If you write anymore, I won't like you anymore." Rongyu looked at her curiously. Ai Meng Meng's expression became even fiercer. She hugged his notebook. "In the future, if you want to write about this, you have to get my permission." Rongyu couldn't help but laugh. There was a hint of a smile in his eyes as he said, "You're so overbearing." "So be it." Ai Meng Meng snorted softly. The smile in Rongyu's eyes deepened, as if he didn't care. Then, he swept her into his arms along with her belongings. Then, he sighed. Meng Meng, I'll be good and accompany you until you grow old. She leaned on his shoulder and the notebook was right against her chest. It hurt a little, but her heart hurt even more. Rongyu said that to comfort her. Chapter 46-44. After hugging for a long time, Meng Meng finally broke free from his embrace and said softly, "I'm going to buy breakfast." She had only taken a step when Rongyu held on to her hand. He looked up and smiled. "Let's hire a nanny later." Meng Meng was stunned for a moment before she quickly said, "Rongyu, I can cook." Her expression turned ugly as she bit her lip. "Although it doesn't taste good, I will really work hard. Trust me." Rongyu was still smiling. "You can learn from me. If you do well in the future, we won't need a nanny anymore." Meng Meng didn't know why he was saying this. She wanted to ask but decided against it. She just felt that he really liked her at this moment. Otherwise, with his status, he wouldn't need to look for her at all. After all, she had so many things to do and her past was so unbearable. She looked at his handsome face and suddenly felt an indescribable feeling. She couldn't explain it clearly. It was best. She didn't say anything and just leaned forward to kiss his forehead. She cherished this kiss very much. To Meng Meng, Rongyu was the most precious gift she had received in her life. He was the thing that she cherished the most. After she kissed him, she straightened her body and her face was a little hot. She was a young girl and she used to be quite bold. However, after she got together with him, she was usually passive. It was probably because she felt inferior and lacked confidence because she wasn't good enough. But now she felt that she might have been wrong. She felt that Rongyu was a good person and he probably felt that she was a good person and liked her too. Otherwise, why would he choose her? "I'm going," she said softly. Rongyu smiled and nodded. "Be careful." At this moment, the nurse came over to help him with the drip. She didn't have anything to worry about, so she took her purse and walked out. The morning sun was golden and warm. Meng Meng looked up and breathed in the fresh air. She thought that after Rongyu recovered, she could spend a holiday with him nearby and bask in the sun together. It would be very comfortable and it would be good for his body. Perhaps it was because the sun was too comfortable, Meng Meng felt a faint warmth. But as soon as he opened his eyes, all the blood in his body froze. Every pore on his body opened up in a guarded manner. The person she met was none other than Jia. Jia had a cold expression on his face. Jia's expression made Meng Meng shudder. Just like that, they faced each other for a long time. Meng Meng calmly asked, "What are you doing here?" Jia looked at her for a while and said coldly, "I'll wait for you in the cafe in front." With that, he turned around and left. Meng Meng stood where she was for a long time. She could choose not to go, but she knew that Jia would do something crazy if she didn't go. Rongyu's body couldn't go anywhere. Even if she wanted to hide from Jia, she couldn't. She hesitated for a long time before walking towards Jia. Jia had already picked a place to sit by the window. She was originally extremely beautiful, and she was still beautiful at this moment. It was just that she was not as exquisite as before. Instead, she looked a bit more lonely and cold. Jia held a cigarette in his hand. As he smoked slowly, he looked at Meng Meng, who had just entered. There was a hint of evil in his eyes. Chapter 46-45. Meng Meng sat down opposite her and said in a low voice, "What's the matter?" AI Jia was still smoking a thin cigarette, not caring about the stares. She stared at AI Meng Meng and the wallet in her hand and smiled coldly. Then, she said casually, "There's something." There was no expression on AI Meng Meng's face. She just stared at AI Jia for a long time. AI Jia let her stare patiently and didn't look impatient at all. After a long time, AI Meng Meng said in a choked voice, "Haven't I been hurt enough by you? Why do you still want to see me? I'm in a bit of trouble." AI Jia put out the cigarette and said directly, "I need 50 million. Think of a way." AI Meng Meng's face turned pale. She stared at AI Jia and said angrily, "Why should I give you money?" And it was 50 million. Because of this. AI Jia smiled faintly and pushed an envelope to AI Meng Meng. AI Meng Meng looked at the envelope and her face darkened. She didn't have to think to know what it was. Lu Chang got out of prison last month. Think about it. If he released some money, he could go to prison for a few years. He would be very willing to give me a few 100,000. But you've worked so hard to marry a man. Think about it. Do you think Rong Yu will still want you if the truth is exposed? He's a celebrity now and there are a lot of women who want to marry him. You're not that important. At most, you'll be a nurse or nanny who looks good. Don't associate yourself with true love. You don't deserve it." AI Ming Ming's gaze was fixed on the envelope as if she was looking at a poisonous snake. She knew deep down that the real poisonous snake was actually AI Jia. She bit her lip and said after a long time, "I don't have 50 million. Rong Yu does." AI Jia chuckled. "You probably don't know, but Rong Yu's scripts cost 20 million per episode. He signed a contract with King Entertainment for 10 episodes. I've already taken half of the deposit." Qin Mo was really generous to Rong Yu. Rong Yu's wife's ex-boyfriend had suddenly disappeared, and he actually spent 100 million to sign him. This was probably the worst deal Qin Mo had ever made. However, Rong Yu was worth the price. There were many good actors, but there were very few good screenwriters. AI Jia admitted that she was making things difficult for AI Meng Meng. She just wanted to see AI Meng Meng struggling. AI Meng Meng bit her lip and said in a low voice after a long time, "Too much. 30 million, no less." AI Jia stood up. "Otherwise, you know the consequences. Transfer the money to this bank card. I know you can make the decision for the 30 million. With that, she left. AI Meng Meng was left sitting there alone in a daze. She knew that she had given him this time, and there would be a future. However, if she did not give it to him, what would AI Jia do to her or even to Rong Yu? Rong Yu had left some money with her, but this money was exchanged with Rong Yu's health, and she had given it to her enemy. AI Meng Meng couldn't do it. However, if she did not give it to him, the consequences would be tragic. AI Meng Meng sat there and looked at the envelope quietly. After a long time, she finally took it. She opened it and there was a bank card inside. There was not much expression on her face. She just slowly put the card into her bag. About an hour later, she returned to the ward with breakfast. Chapter 46-46. Memorize. Rong Yu looked at her quietly and smiled. "Why are you so late? Where did he go?" AI Meng Meng raised the breakfast in her hand. "Your favorite." I queued a little longer. "There are so many people today," she said a lot, but she didn't even know what she said. Rong Yu looked at her quietly. "Meng Meng, I'm hungry." She hurriedly made breakfast for him, trying to pretend that nothing had happened. Ronyu didn't say anything. After eating, he lay down. Beside his pillow was his phone. He had just received a message from his accountant. He said that his wife had transferred 30 million to Aijia. He remembered that he had given her 50 million and she had given Aijia 30 million. How could she be so stupid? Did she think that she could live a peaceful life by giving Aijia money? If a lunatic like Aijia was not locked up, she would be a scourge. She would never be at peace. However, Ronyu did not say anything. He acted as if nothing had happened. Because he was afraid of scaring her, afraid that she would overthink. However, Ronyu met China Mo in the afternoon when Ai Meng Meng wasn't around. After the discussion, Chin Mo's eyes were a little quiet. Let's go and see He Huan. As he spoke, he laughed self-deprecatingly. The 18-year-old He Huan. Right now, He Huan had a bad temper. She was like a little girl who needed to be coaxed at all times. Chin Mo could be coaxed, but he was really afraid that even if he coaxed her, she would still leave and go abroad in the end. He was afraid that they would part again. He knew that He Huan would not give up. She wanted to see Ronyu. However, Ronyu had rejected his offer. He said very indifferently, "It's better if I don't." Chin Mo gazed at him quietly. After a long time, he smiled faintly and said, "Very well." He didn't force it. This kind of thing couldn't be forced anyway. After Ronyu left, Chin Mo also returned to the ward. He Huan would be discharged the next day. She had lost her memory, and it wasn't something that could be cured just by staying in the hospital. Chin Mo chose to accompany her. Or, as Chin Chen said, he wanted her to fall in love with him again. But how could it be so easy? Chin Mo pushed open the door and saw He Huan playing with her phone on the bed. Her brain was slightly injured, but her body was fine. Playing with her phone was not a problem. They went on like this for a few days, and she paid him little attention. Not to mention anything else. These few days, Chin Mo was also angry, but there was no place for him to vent his anger. The 18-year-old He Huan was so arrogant. Therefore, he still had to coax her. Actually, He Huan knew that Chin Mo had come in. Although she didn't like him now, they were very close. Therefore, when he came in, she didn't move at all and continued to play with her phone. When she woke up, she had a lot of games to play to pass the time. When Chin Mo saw that she was playing with her phone, he was a little angry. He went over and snatched away the thing in her hand. He quickly finished the game for her and was about to put it away when the 18-year-old girl leaned over and said in a soft voice, "Chin Mo, how did you do it? I played more than 10 times and still couldn't win. Teach me." Chin Mo looked at her and smiled. "Because you have a pig brain." He Huan felt that she had been implicated and glared at him for a long time. She didn't know why, but she was 33 years old. Perhaps it was because she was young, and now that she had the memory of 18 years old, Chin Mo felt that she had really gone back. Chapter 46-47. Updated quickly, he felt that He Huan had become the little girl from back then. That was when he liked her the most. And she had liked someone else back then. But now that she was talking to him in such a soft voice, his heart couldn't help but soften. He couldn't describe the feeling. Actually, the game she was playing was from 2 to 3 years ago. Moreover, it was developed by a subsidiary of King Entertainment. He Huan wasn't good at it in the past, and now she was even worse. Chin Mo raised his phone and smiled. "You want to play? Help me clear a few levels." She bit her pretty lips and tugged at his sleeve with her little hand. Chi Nemo lowered his head to take a look, a hint of a smile in his eyes. Huan wanted to shrink back, but he wouldn't let her. He grabbed her hand and brought her to the sofa. Sitting down, he placed her in front of him and sat in his arms. He was really good at games. His long fingers moved non-stop. Huan's gaze landed on the screen, and then she sneaked a glance at his fingers. They were really good. And she had been sitting up straight, but after a while, her neck started to ache. It was indescribably sad. Chi Mo's hand moved a little and she fell into his embrace, naturally snuggling into his embrace. His figure was good, and she could feel his muscles even when she was leaning against him. And he smelled really, really good. Huan was a little flustered. This was the Chi Mo she wasn't too familiar with. The last Chi Mo she knew was 25. He was young, good-looking, handsome, and a little domineering. And a 40-year-old man was at the most attractive age in a man's life. An 18-year-old girl like Huan couldn't take it, and so she couldn't sit still in his arms. Chi Mo quickly realized that something was wrong with her. He lowered his head and looked at Huan, his voice low and deep. "What are you thinking about?" Huan was stunned for a moment, then she bit her lip. "It's a little hot." Chi Mo chuckled. "It's 22 degrees. You think it's hot?" Huan's face was a little hot, and she stayed in his arms for a while longer. Chi Mo played a few levels and stuffed the phone into her hands. "You do it." Huan was stunned. She wanted to let him do it, but then she felt like she wouldn't leave his arms, so she took the phone and pretended to play. However, all her attention was on Chi Mo, who was behind her. And so, she died countless times in less than 5 minutes. Huan was embarrassed and she wanted to smash the phone. "I don't want to play anymore." It was rare that she was willing to stay in his arms. How could Chi Mo let go of such an opportunity? He took the phone and pulled her into his embrace with one hand. He slowed down the speed of the call as a form of teaching her. This time, Huan watched obediently and attentively. On the other hand, the one who taught by example was not very attentive. So, in the end, Chi Mo was over. To Boss Chin, this was very humiliating. During the beta, he had cleared the game in one go. Now, he was only at level 10, and he actually died. Chi Mo's expression didn't look good. He stared at the phone for a long time. Huan stared blankly for a long time. After a while, she said softly, "Chi Mo, the game is over." "I know." His voice was a little stiff. Then, he took the phone again. This time, he didn't look at her or teach her. Instead, he started playing and accidentally broke a record. Chapter 46-48. I know. His voice was a little stiff as he picked up his phone again. This time, he didn't look at her or teach her. Instead, he started playing and accidentally broke a record. After breaking the record, Chi Mo placed the phone in Huan's hand and looked at her. Huan exclaimed, "Wow, that's amazing." Chi Mo looked reserved as he took out his phone and said calmly, "Let's form a team in the future." Huan looked at him eagerly. Chi Mo had already quickly opened the game and added her. Huan nodded and stared blankly at the new friend list on her phone. Chi Mo was indeed a straight man. His in-game ID was Chi Mo himself, and he was the top player in the entire server. Huan stared at it for a long time before she asked softly, "Chi Mo, did you use money to get there?" Chi Mo's face darkened. He glared at her and gritted his teeth, saying word by word, "I need to use money to get there. I've been number 1 in the entire server since a few years ago, okay?" To this day, no one could challenge his position. Now that she said that he used money to get there, he wanted to see if he could. Therefore, Huan became number 2 in the entire server in the afternoon. Therefore, Xiaowan could only play with Qin Mo from now on. Her skills were really too bad. And now, Huan played a few more rounds of the game. She was so focused that she didn't realize that she was actually in his arms. Qin Mo would tug at her hair from time to time and it felt good. He was already 40 years old and his wife was back to 18 years old. This was a happy thing no matter where it was. After a while, Huan passed a level and turned around happily. Qin Mo, I passed. But as soon as she turned around, her face accidentally brushed against his lips. Immediately, the atmosphere became a little awkward. Huan stammered, I didn't do it on purpose. Qin Mo just looked at her. He resisted the urge to touch his own face, and then his voice was especially low and hoarse. So you're going to apologize? Huan was still staring at him. Qin Mo chuckled again. His slender fingers gently touched her face. After a while, he finally lowered his head and gently kissed her lips. This is my apology gift. Because he didn't want to scare her, the kiss ended as soon as it touched. Huan only felt a warmth on her lips before he left. She stared at him stupidly. Qin Mo chuckled. What's the matter? Huan was still in a daze. After a long time, she whispered, You kissed me. Qin Mo grunted, Yeah, I kissed you. He didn't say much, just stared at her. Huan bit her lower lip and carefully moved her body away, wanting to keep some distance from him. But Qin Mo quickly grabbed her arm and pulled her closer. His voice was even lower and hoarse. We're husband and wife. Isn't it normal for us to kiss? Even if. He didn't finish his sentence and just looked at her. Huan's heart was beating very fast. She understood what he meant. She covered her face and didn't speak for a long time. It was a little unbelievable. She and Qin Mo. In her memory, it was impossible. She couldn't remember when she didn't like him. She liked Romeo. Thinking of Romeo, Huan's heartbeat slowed down when she saw Qin Mo. She looked at Qin Mo and said very slowly, I'm not ready to be your wife. Let's go home and get a room, okay? Chapter 46-49. She looked at Qin Mo and said slowly, I'm not ready to be your wife. Let's go home and get a room, okay? Qin Mo looked at her quietly and asked very slowly, I want to know if you're going to inform me or discuss it. Huan bit her lip. Is there a difference? Qin Mo said directly, Of course it's different. If it's discuss, I can think about it. But if it's to inform me, then don't even think about it, Huan. Huan was still in a daze. After a long while, she said, I choose discuss it. Qin Mo stared at her little face for a long time before he smiled faintly. Are you sure? Huan nodded. Yes, I'm sure. Then, Qin Mo said slowly, if it's discuss, I won't agree. She glared at him. His expression was slightly domineering. We're husband and wife, aren't we? Huan still wanted to struggle, but Qin Mo didn't give her a chance at all. If you continue to object, I don't mind proposing some other duties as husband and wife. And this is something you can't escape from, Huan. She was in a daze. You can't. Why can't I? Qin Mo's voice was a little cold. You know I can. He narrowed his eyes. Huan, don't make me angry. Otherwise, I won't be that patient. He paused. After all, you're only 18 years old now, aren't you? He pinched her chin gently with his fingers. There are some things that you don't want to happen soon, right? Juan was not stupid. She completely understood what he was saying and what he meant. She was 33 years old now. She was no longer an 18-year-old girl. She was his legal wife. An 18-year-old girl, Juan, might be able to throw a tantrum with Mo, but she didn't dare to now. No matter how willful she was, she had to take care of Juan, who Mo hadn't let her see. She heard that he would bring her to live in an apartment, and Enchanting would take care of Juan. Juan bit her lip and didn't say anything else. Mo had always known her temper, so he said in a low voice, "What's wrong? Are you angry again?" Juan was indeed angry. He said angrily, "How would I dare?" Mo laughed. "Why wouldn't you dare?" He reached out and ruffled her hair. "All right, you've been playing for a long time. You should take a break." His attitude towards her was like that of a pet. Juan bit her lip and didn't speak for a long time. "What's wrong? Is there anything else you want to say?" His easygoing manner was probably the reason why she didn't dare to voice her opinion about sleeping together again. Juan bit her lip. "I want to see Juan." Mo's body sat on the sofa. After a long time, he smiled. "Maybe after a while. You've forgotten her. You might not be used to each other." Juan still wanted to say something, but Mo stopped her. "Take a nap." She could only lie down angrily. Mo stayed with her for a while. After she fell asleep, he went to the company. Although Juan had lost her memory, she didn't become a little idiot. So he left her in the hospital and only asked someone to watch over her. When Juan woke up, Mo wasn't there. She sat up and looked around. She knew that someone was guarding outside the door, but she didn't want to go out. But now she was a little hungry. She wanted to go to Chen's office to find something to eat. Chapter 4650. When Juan woke up, Mo wasn't around. She sat up and looked around. She knew that someone was guarding the door, but she didn't want to go out. However, she was a little hungry now. She wanted to go to Chen's office to find something to eat. As soon as she appeared, two people immediately followed her, while the other two guarded the door. Juan didn't care about the people following her. She just calmly walked towards the elevator, wanting to go downstairs to find Chen. However, before she reached the elevator, Juan stopped in her tracks. Because she met Rongyu. Rongyu was different from the one she remembered. He was still very young, but more mature. In a VIP ward, Rongyu sat on the sofa with a notebook in his hand. He was writing something with his head down. Juan could see the side of his face from where she was standing. He looked very good. It was how Juan remembered him. Juan stood at the door and watched quietly. Rongyu didn't notice her presence. She kept standing there until a girl she didn't know came over with a cup of tea and handed it to Rongyu. Rongyu looked up and said something to her. He even kissed her on the lips. Juan looked at him in a daze. Then, she unconsciously touched her lips. The way Rongyu kissed others was the same way Mo kissed her. Mo said that Rongyu was married and had a wife. Her name was Ai Mangmang. Juan looked at him quietly. It was as if the blood in her body had frozen. Actually, she should have left. After all, it was 2019. So many years had passed. Rongyu already had a wife. There was really no need to meet again. Moreover, it was also embarrassing for Juan. Because everyone had their own lives, but Huan still liked Rongyu. However, she was Qin Mo's wife. Rongyu also had a wife. Huan took a step back and wanted to leave. But at that moment, Rongyu looked up and saw her. When their eyes met, Huan took a step back. However, she was stopped by Rongyu. Huan. He called her name. Come in and have a seat. Huan didn't have much expression on her face, but she still nodded and walked in slowly. In fact, Rongyu couldn't be calm in front of Huan, who had memories from when she was 18 years old. However, adults needed to control themselves. He had a wife and he loved her. So, no matter how moved he was, he could only control himself. Huan walked in and stopped the bodyguards. Wait outside. Go, Huan said. Go, then, he said to Ai Mengmeng softly, go get a cup of tea. Then he said to Rong, he said to Ai. Girl, he said. As a woman, she could see the longing in Huan's eyes. Ai up, he woman in he heart day. You, because of Huan's background, because of Huan's talent, because Huan and Rongyu used to like each other, because Huan married Qin Mo for Rongyu. They had Mo Qin Day. Go, they had a tea and Ai Jia's words hurt her deeply. Ai Mengmeng was not convinced when Ai Jia told her that she was just a younger and prettier nanny and caregiver. She felt that she wasn't, but when Huan appeared in front of her, she felt that she was. Chapter 46-51. Ai Mengmeng wasn't convinced when Ai Jia said that she was just a younger and prettier nanny and nurse. She didn't think that she was one, but when Huan appeared in front of her, she felt that she was. Huan was 33 years old, a little older than her, but Huan really looked like a young girl now. She was so pure and innocent that even Rongyu would be tempted. She could clearly see his heart in Rongyu's eyes. Ai Mengmeng felt a little inferior, so she went to pour tea. Rongyu looked at her and seemed to know what she was thinking. He grabbed her and said, "Wait a minute." Ai Mengmeng was a little nervous. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Rongyu patted her hand. "Go and pour some tea." Ai Mengmeng felt that he was a little strange and nervous. She knew that he wouldn't abandon her, but she was always alone and she was afraid that he would love someone else. Then, being with him would be unbearable. Ai Mengmeng used to be very materialistic. She always dreamed of marrying a rich man. It didn't matter whether the man loved her or not, the point was that he was rich. However, after marrying Rongyu, she realized that what she wanted wasn't money, but people. It was Rongyu and his love. She felt that she was greedy, but she was his wife and she had the right to ask for it. However, after this morning, Ai Mengmeng knew that she didn't have the right anymore. She used Rongyu's 30 million to buy her unknown happiness. She didn't even know how long Ai Jia would let her go with the 30 million, and she didn't know what Ai Jia would think when he found out. Would he abandon her? Compared to Huan, Ai Mengmeng was selfish. So, she felt guilty at the moment, and she couldn't take Rongyu's pat. She had let him down. Actually, she should have left. It was a good thing for both of them. He could find a good nurse to take care of him, and maybe they could get married in the future without being with a vampire like her. She was too negative. At this moment, Ai Mengmeng despised herself. Rongyu knew how she felt, but he had to take care of her pride, so he couldn't say too much. He only spoke to Huan casually and politely, but there was a hint of unfamiliarity in his words. They were actually two people from the torrent of time. Chi Nemo could hide anything from her, but he couldn't. He had too many things to worry about. As for Ai Meng Meng, she stood far away and listened quietly, so much so that her water was not delivered. Rong Yu's voice sounded softly, Meng Meng. Ai Meng Meng was taken aback. She immediately walked over and placed the cup in front of He Huan. Rong Yu glanced at her and then wanted to say something to He Huan. He Huan said calmly, I'm a little hungry. I'll go find Qin Qin. Just as he stood up, he was shocked by the person behind him. It was Chi Nemo. She did not know when he had stood behind her, but he had not made a sound. He Huan looked at him, and he looked back at her. Time seemed to have stopped. The atmosphere was mesmerizing. Rong Yu was still sitting and drinking tea. Ai Meng Meng walked up to him and wanted to ask something, but he grabbed her arm and pressed her to sit down next to him. Then he glanced at her. So, Ai Meng Meng didn't say anything. He Huan and Chi Nemo looked at each other for a long time, and Chi Nemo said, Why are you here? He Huan bit her lip and said in a low voice, I'm hungry, so I ran into Rong Yu when I went to find Qin Qin. Chapter 46-52. The expression on Qin Mo's face was still inscrutable. Are you explaining? No, He Huan answered very quickly, and she seemed to be a little guilty. Qin Mo smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. He just said goodbye to Rong Yu and left with his men. When he reached the door, he said in a reproachful tone, How did you disturb him? Rong Yu is a patient now. He Huan was actually a little confused. She looked down to calm herself down before looking up. I'm a patient too. After she said that, Qin Mo placed his hand over her eyes. He said, No. He Huan froze for a moment. She wanted to move his hand away, but when she raised it halfway, she dropped it again. She didn't dare to move it away. She felt guilty. Because she saw Rong Yu. Because Rong Yu had a wife. Because she was sad. To He Huan, missing out on Rong Yu was a very regretful thing. Even though she knew that many things had happened in the past, which was why they weren't together, or that she might have fallen in love with Qin Mo, He Huan couldn't remember it now. She was still in the purest memory of when she was 18 years old. She was very sad now. She even wanted to cry, but she didn't dare to. It was too embarrassing. It wasn't that she hadn't cried in front of Qin Mo before, but that was in the past. They all said that she was his wife, so she couldn't get close to him. So no matter how sad she was now, she wouldn't cry in front of him. Even though she really wanted to cry. She didn't cry, but her eyes were red. Then, tears rolled down her cheeks one after another. It was very embarrassing because Qin Mo was her husband, but she was crying for someone else. Qin Mo stood there and looked at her hanging head. Every strand of her hair exuded a sense of dejection. His heart ached. The pain was no less than hers. He said hoarsely, Do you want to find someone else to like? He Huan wiped her tears away. She wanted to move away, but she couldn't. Finally, she bit her lip. Tell them to go away. He didn't want others to see him crying. She actually wanted Qin Mo to leave, but she didn't dare to. She was afraid that if she annoyed him, he would make some unreasonable demand. So, she just stood there and cried. Qin Mo asked the two bodyguards to leave first, and he took a handkerchief. Don't cry, isn't it just Rong Yu? At this moment, his voice was unexpectedly gentle and not rude at all. Even He Huan was a little stunned. She looked up at him cautiously. You're not angry. If being angry can make you love me again, I can also be angry every day. Chi-Nemo sighed, his hand holding her small shoulder, gently folding her back into his embrace. He-Huan resisted a little. She rested her head on his shoulder and tried to break free, but he was too strong. His voice was hoarse and pleasant to the ear. If you want to cry, cry in my arms. You're not allowed to go anywhere. She was stunned for a moment. She wanted to raise her head, but he pressed it back down. It was a little rough, but more than that, it was doting. This was a doting method that He-Huan was very familiar with. She used to think that it would never happen again. But now, Chi-Nemo was doting on her like this again. She remembered that when she was 16 years old, she said that she hated him and that she would never like him. After that, he didn't talk to her anymore, and the way he looked at her was cold. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.